Attacking government?
Yes. Our government was based on it.
Right.
And God we trust is on our money. So,
One of the amendments in the Constitution says that, there will be a separation between church and state. A lot of people are saying they want to see more church in state.
I do. I think so.
So certain parts of the Constitution, take it or leave it.
Yeah. So, I believe fully in the Constitution. But I still
Just
don't-
not that particular
Yeah, well,
particular thing.
They need church, or we need less government in our schools and more church in our schools, I think.
More church in our state.
So things are about to get real. Things are about to spice up as Donald Trump's brand of fake Christianity meets the real Christian nationalists who are surrounding him. But keep in mind that Christian nationalists also are not real, genuine Christians either.
People are talking about making America a Christian nation. Would you support that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The values, thought that's what we built the country on, was my impression, but obviously things got twisted along the way. It's pretty disheartening to see what's going on. So many people are unaware of the just general challenges in life, what's going on behind the scenes on the bad side.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, conspiracy theories, tin hat guy, call it what you will. I've been in the rabbit hole deep in all directions, and over the last couple of years, I've been awake for a long time. Excuse me, but deep in the rabbit hole, verifying incidentals, looking at videos, checking backgrounds, doing homework. I had to vet everything, and I was never a real church kind of guy, but in the last couple of years, I've gotten real spiritual. In here, you have to get with yourself.
What happens to people who are not Christian in this country, who are atheist, who are Jewish, who are Islamic? If America is religious freedom and there is a sort of a mandate for Christianity in America, what happens to that?
Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Well, what do we say to our Jewish brothers and sisters if we're saying we have a Christian nation?
I wouldn't necessarily even call it pushing Christianity, or I don't even go there. I'm like, I am what I am. So knowing that gives me my spirituality. So that's a worldwide thing. That's not Islamic. That's not Hebrew or Jewish or German or any other. It's humankind. In my book, that's kind of how things sort of seem to work, if you're paying attention.
Democrats ignorantly say this is in the Constitution, separation of church and state, and they don't know what it means, and they think that means you can't talk about God. Well, if there really is this separation of church and state like they believe it means, well, then what is Ilhan doing with her hijab on? I mean, why is she able to go in there with that? I mean, why aren't they shouting that from the rooftops, separation of church and state?
And this threat to democracy has made its way to Congress. I mean, my colleague, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, has said, quote, Christian nationalism is actually a good thing. It is an identity that Republicans need to embrace, and I am being attacked by the godless left because I said I am a proud Christian nationalist, end quote. My colleague, Representative Lowen Boebert, said, quote, the church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk, end quote, junk being the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The Bible itself in 2 Corinthians actually warns us against this. Paul warned against this. He warned us against people who would preach of a Christ that differs from the true Christ that we learn about in the Bible. That's exactly what Christian nationalism is doing. I condemn religious extremism everywhere, globally and domestically. We have to recognize the threat it poses to our most sacred freedoms and root it out everywhere. And I think it's incumbent, especially upon us as Christians, and me as a Christian, to be at the forefront of the fight to ensure that white nationalism and Christian nationalism doesn't see the light of day. Thank you, and I yield back.
White Christian nationalism fuses Christianity with a rigid view of civic life, a view that true Americans are white, native-born, and conservative. On January 6th, it was the connective tissue that tied disparate groups together and propelled them to action. It's infecting our government, from members of Congress and top officials in the previous administration to the wife of a Supreme Court justice whose messages to the president's chief of staff leading up to the insurrection smacked of white Christian nationalism. Thankfully, good Americans, people of faith and non-believers, are standing up to this violent ideology.
And of course, the normal suspects, MAGA, the white Christians, the least persecuted and least oppressed and least attacked group of people in the entire country are whining and complaining about how persecuted and oppressed and attacked they are, even though they're literally on top of the pyramid.
I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all.
The politics of white grievance won in this election. That's what happened. There's plenty to say about the Democratic Party not delivering, as I've admitted and as I've said many times. But at the end of the day, this just was not a difficult decision. We put a multi-convicted felon, idiot, con artist, racist, rapist, criminal back into the White House who literally tried to overthrow the American government. He literally tried to do that. And white America was like, I don't care, because, a competent black woman, that's just a step too far. Listen, at the end of the day, that's what we're dealing with. We are dealing with a movement of people who do not want to see progress. All the right wing talks about is there's too much DEI, there's too much critical race theory. We got to kick the immigrants out. Black people are criminals. There's so much rampant crime in the country. But then when we put Donald Trump back into the White House, it's like, oh, well, racism, that's not really the issue. Like, what do you mean it's not the issue? It's literally all these people talk about. It's all they talk about. You go outside of metropolitan areas, like I'm in St. Louis right now, right? Very, very, very red state. But then outside of St. Louis, outside of your metropolitan areas, you have mostly white communities that are mostly homogenous. They don't really have to see or deal with minorities, and they don't want to. They don't want to. And for decades, that is what the Republican Party has been tapping into, such that these people will vote for a party who actively do things like make healthcare more expensive, don't, want to cut Social Security, Medicare. They talk about this all the time. Don't even want a minimum wage to exist. But the reason that these rural white folks vote for them is because they're selling racism. This is nothing new, and we need to stop pretending as if this is something new. It's the same old story of America.